Conversations for change. Because the world is ready. Well, it is my great pleasure today to have the opportunity to have a conversation with Elena Tewari, who is, among many other things, a dear friend and a certified Y coach on top of all her corporate credentials and work, and one of the most dedicated students of spiritual practices that I know. I think, Elena, you might have done more different classes than anybody I've ever met.
Probably. First of all, thank you so much, Becky, for having me on Conversations for Change. I really love your podcast and your mission with it that you bring to the world during these times. Indeed, I think I've done a lot of classes and a lot of retreats, if you want. I started a few years ago, but somehow I guess that from early childhood, I knew that I was searching for something. And of course, life takes over and you roll with it. And that yearning for something grew. And there is a moment, I think, in everybody's life, right, when you have to give it some space. And for me, it started about 10 years ago with some voices coming into my head that, hey, maybe it's time to look into becoming something else. And I had no clue what that meant. And then I started my journey with Mary Magdalene, actually. It was like a theme that brought me to many other things. And yes, many classes, all of them ended with this Y school from Simon Sinek and the Y coach certification, which I would say it's one of the most marvelous things that happened to me.
Wow, that's saying a lot for you to say that, because I know some of the things you've done. So clearly that is a powerful process if you hold it up at the top of all the other things.
Yes, because at least in my case, right, after few hours, in general 3 hours of going through the white discovery, I had an epiphany and my life changed completely because I could see who I really was at the core in shining my brightest light. And for various reasons, most of them being, we can distill them in not being aware of I truly was, or not wanting to see that. I avoided myself, right? And I went to through whatever life throws to you, and coping with circumstances, even after all these classes and retreats, until I I knew who I was, what my gifts were, and I took responsibility for them. And ever since, I don't think there is a day when I let it be otherwise.
Wow. Yeah, I have to say, having known you now 5 years anyway, I think, um, what I've observed from this side is that you have really changed rather dramatically since that process.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me because I think about how can I put my finger on what that change is? And the only thing that I can really come up with is, like you said, it's you're comfortable in who you are, and you seem so happy, and you're clear about what you want.
Yes. Yes. And what I realized with going through the process, right, is that looking at, as we started, at all the classes I've done and retreats and meeting all these, let's say, more evolved humans on the planet, it was actually me consuming spirituality, right? And looking at me growing, which I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it got me to where I am. Whereas in this process, I realized that actually my fulfillment doesn't come from accumulating spirituality, but rather giving my gifts, which are innate to who I am, um, giving them, to the world. And that was for me a big change because, as I said, I was a consumer of spirituality and not the giver, which is my soul print, if you want.
Right. So when you say that, I'm assuming what you mean is another way that you could say it is that you were the student, you were always playing the role of the student who was looking for answers outside of yourself, and now you're doing something else. What are you doing now that's different?
So, from a very practical point of view, as a Y coach, right? I sit with people that are ready for this process, and I hold the space for them and guide them to an extent to find who they truly are at their core. And it's a beautiful journey of
Mm.
going to that. It's not necessarily easy because you have to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, and I am taking you there out of the comfort zone and look at your true self because it's always there. It's just that we deny ourselves um, the privilege to know who we truly are, and that process itself of being there, it's and seeing at the end of each session the instant change in most of the people I worked with is the gift that I receive in return. And it's the biggest. It's a true fulfillment. It's so tangible for me, more than any retreat, I would say, or class where, as I said, I accumulated all the knowledge and the experiences, but they were contained to myself. They weren't shared in many ways. So it goes beyond myself. And I think that's actually the why, right? In being a why coach, the why is to find the most fulfilled self, which also means being part of something bigger than who you are.
Right,
Mm.
right. And yes, and I would say the other thing that I love that came out of your experience is this whole idea of dancing,
Yes.
which was a big surprise.
Yes, it was a huge surprise because, the process has certain steps. And it's interesting because you talk about yourself, right? And that's why this is so impactful, because there is nothing from outside. It's all about you and your life stories. And interestingly enough, in many of my stories, dancing was present, and I was the happiest when I was dancing. And I'm not a professional dancer or anything, but I think I just unchain my best energy when I dance. And I haven't danced in years. And funny enough, in the past 1 year or so, I talked with various people, and even with one homeopathic doctor, and he asked me out of the blue, Elena, do you like to dance? And I was like, why is he asking me if I like to dance, right? And I said, of course I like to dance, but of course I didn't do anything after he asked me that. And then also I was in another class yet where one of the practices was dancing. It was dancing meditation and Osho shaking and all that kind of stuff, and I did it for a while and then I stopped. And then, of course, when my stories brought up dancing, finally, the penny dropped that the universe was trying to give me a message: go back and dance. And when I realized that, immediately the next week I started going dancing, and the energy that comes from that, couple of hours of dancing is like it's carrying me through the week. It's so beautiful. It's amazing.
Well, there we are. So dancing was definitely part of your
Yeah.
why, how to be happy.
Yes, and it's not only dancing as a form of expression, it's also dancing with life. Because for me, I think in my why, and I'm happy to share it, right?
Hmm.
Is so my personal why is to invite others, which is again important, inviting others to dance with life so that they can grow and reconnect. And I am at my best when I do that. And there are, and we didn't talk about a little bit about the golden circle and the why at a more theoretical level. And I'm happy to do this in the next few minutes. But, I am at my best also when I dance, and when I dance, I can trigger my why into expression.
Right, right. And this whole idea of dancing through life and inviting others, I mean, it's beautiful, first of all,
Mm,
but it also makes sense to me that that is it's another way that it's how you're connecting to
mm,
people.
mm. Yes, and the statement, right? It's so interesting because for me personally, the statement has behind it the energy of all my stories that were distilled in this statement. So when I think about it or when I read it, all of a sudden I get that jolt, you see, and even now I'm giggling and smiling of energy. It's like I'm plugged into my own source, right? And it fuels me. And this is, as I said, is the beauty of this process, because it's about me, who I am at my own core. It's not a learned skill set. It's literally my, as I said, I like to call it my soul print.
Yeah, I like that very much, actually, your soul print. And that was certainly my experience as well when you took me through the process. And
Yes.
I have to say, it's been very profound for me as well, the change that has come through my experience, because what I've discovered, and it was very subtle actually at first, but what came to me was suddenly this sense of these sort of things that I do in my life that I think about where my focus is on doing the best to serve others, um, in relationships, particularly in my family life and those kinds of things. And I actually had an experience a couple of days after we did this process together where I was thinking deeply about a particular situation. And one of the things that I do to give myself insight and to help me reflect on what I'm thinking about is I pull tarot cards. And I pulled this card, and it just expressed so beautifully an entire situation I had been in earlier in the day. And I looked at it, and then I thought, and I had pulled it specifically on that topic, right? I had thought about that again, and I said, let me just pull a card. And this card just reflected back to me so beautifully all the thoughts that I had had about the situation. And I got up to cross the room to go do something else. And I literally was stopped in my tracks as I was walking across the room. And I just stopped and I stood there, and this feeling came over me. And it just was, it absolutely stopped everything else in my mind. And it just was this feeling of, you know,
Mm,
when you have to own it, And it was really stunning because it was saying to me, sort of, you don't need to be playing these games anymore of looking outside yourself and getting a reflection back.
mm,
You can do it if you want to, but it's just a reflection of what you already know. And it was so quiet. It wasn't a big, it wasn't like I saw lightning bolts or some figure formed in the room in front of me. It was absolute silence and just this feeling. And it was just sort of like, oh, and I knew it was right. And that was just a huge shift for me.
Magical.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I haven't had a chance to tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to be able to share that with you, because I really feel like that was a direct result of us doing this work together.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Maybe I should take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the why, right? And
Yeah, that
about
would be wonderful.
the process, I think. So, the golden circle, our listeners may have heard of it from Simon Sinek, especially in the business world. It's something that is scientifically, it's natural. It's, as I said, for individuals, is innate to who we are. And there is also, I would like to say, a TED talk, and he has a book, Start With Why. And the concept is there are three concentrical circles, right? And they, if you want, are also arranged in the golden mean, which again, it's so natural and biological to life on Earth. So at the core of the concentrical circle is the why circle, and then the next one is the how, or the house, because there are multiple hows, and then the third one is the what. The why circle is practically our purpose, our cause, and as I like to put it, for when the process is for individual, is the most fulfilled and inspired version of ourselves, who we truly are when we shine our brightest light.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next circle are the hows, and the hows are our intrinsic values and strengths, our code of conduct, how we consistently show up in the world when we are at our best. And the why and the how are always the same through our life, right? They don't change in my personal life or in my professional life. They are something that when they are unearthed, if you want, or when you have clarity, you could tattoo the why on yourself or have it on your tomb, right? They are so stable and representative of who we are. And the what is the hats that we wear in life, be a mother, a daughter, an employee, a friend, the services we bring to the world or the products we create as the result of our actions, right? The outputs. Now, the thing is that what happens through our culture and our education, we always start with the what. And if you think about it, um, also when you introduced me, right, you said Elena is a certified white coach, and she also has this other corporate world credentials, which is starting with the what. Whereas, when we with the why, it could have been Elena is one that invites people to dance with life. And then when you start in that way, that means that everything I do has as a result inspiring, inviting people to dance with life so that they grow and reconnect. It doesn't matter what I do, if I am a Y coach, or if I am at my job, or if I'm with my family. And I think with this process, it turns the tables upside down, and it teaches us, start with who, and with your why, right? Start with everything you do in life, start with that. And then the result of that is propagating to everything you do. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, where the process is. And as I said, it's rooted in science, it's rooted in biology, it has connection with our limbic brain and our neocortex. There is a lot that is weaved into it. And I am so grateful to have had the privilege to become a Y coach and bring this to those that are ready for it.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I am thrilled that you have done this, because it gave me the opportunity to have that experience myself.
Mm.
And I have to say, I'm thinking back to when we went through it. And for me, it was actually in the middle of some really difficult and challenging situations. And I remember really questioning myself.
Mm.
before we did it, thinking, I'm going to mess this all up because I'm just like so full of anxiety about all these other things going on. I don't know if I can even do what I've been asked to do to be prepared, you know? And, um, and I realized something that another friend of ours says quite often to us that I'm starting to integrate into my life, which is everything is always perfect, that it was exactly the way it needed to be because all of that distraction kept me from getting so involved in the process of getting ready that I, overthought it and blew it all up with way too much information. As it was, I think I probably had too much, but at least
Wow.
that way I was able to actually just let go and get into it. And the whole, what surprised me the most, I think, about the whole process and my experience of it and where I ended up
Mhm.
was that it took me to a completely different understanding of myself.
Mhm.
And in the period of time that happened afterwards, I would say, and I wonder if this is true for everyone who goes through it, like for the few weeks after the process was completed, I had some very significant experiences which further expanded my awareness and understanding of what this why really was.
Mm.
And one of them was that a good friend of mine gave a talk about the meeting between therapy and spirituality. And in that talk, she talked about her own journey and what it was like to be in that place where, as a therapist, she was kind of saying, the experiences she was having were, off the books. They weren't things she could talk about with other therapists, right?
Of course.
And how she moved through that and how it changed her. And afterwards, I suddenly realized that I had been living my whole life this way,
Mm.
that this arc of experiences that I was able to now look back at in my own life, which I only did because I suddenly now had this why that was about serving the divine first,
Mm.
which to me was just like, wait a minute, what? It was just, and yet when I took the time and I actually went back and looked at everything in my life through that lens, I suddenly realized I'd been spending a lifetime having these mystical experiences and putting them in little boxes and going, oh, well, that happened. Yeah, but, you know, it's in this little box over here. And now I go back, like you said earlier, I go back into my life and deal with my life, right? And for
Mm.
the first time after this, I started to look back and see that I had a lifetime full of these experiences and
Mm.
I had never kind of connected the dots.
Mm.
And I realized I'd been afraid to connect the
Mm.
dots because it's not acceptable, right?
Yeah, it's a big, big task, right? And if I may, right, when we did the process, even for me, it was the singular, I would say, case, right? That I was looking at it and I was like, how do I put this together? Because it's something that I haven't seen anywhere else, right? Or I haven't heard this kind of stories. Because in general, we interact with people, and there are other people that are very spiritual that we went together through the process, but this was so out of the charts that I'm so happy that but it was way too clear in the end, right? It was way too
Yeah,
um yeah.
there was no avoiding it.
There was no avoiding. I don't think you could have avoided it from the stories.
And the thing also I want to say that I loved about it and that I'm still walking through the process of understanding and exploring is, you said this is version 1.0,
Mm,
right?
exactly.
And for me, my why is connecting heaven and earth
Mm,
so that people can safely give themselves permission to heal.
mm,
And what I realized was it's the so that people can safely give themselves permission to heal. That's the 1.0 part.
mm,
Because what I'm coming to understand the further I explore it, and it's been a little while now, but I think it's going to continue to do this and evolve, is that when I really looked deeply at the experiences that I've had in my life and went into the details, what I realized is that I've been giving people permission to explore and expand their spiritual gifts.
mm.
And I've done it over and over, but I'd never kind of noticed that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, that is a form of healing, but it's not the only form. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I realize now is that, yeah, it's not just the foundation doesn't change, but the hows of how we actually do that can morph into different
Mm.
things.
Yes. And I have a question for you listening, right? How did you feel when you saw the why statement? Because and I'm going somewhere with it, right? Did you feel overwhelmed by the the grand
At
plan has been seated in you?
when yes, when it very first was presented to me, there were two feelings sort of simultaneously.
Mm,
One was sort of this sense of like, well, of course that's what it is. And the other one was this sense of like, oh my God, like, what am I supposed to do with this? How could this be right? It's really interesting, but it really was both.
yeah.
And I think that's tied to what I was saying about hearing this conversation from this person who's a therapist and also has a spiritual life. And that triggered in me an awareness of, oh, I've been hiding my whole life,
Mm,
right? I've been having these
exactly.
experiences and pinpoint one or two or three people in the whole universe who's allowed to hear the story. And that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Because what I noticed, I think we've been conditioned not to accept our gifts and how marvelous we are.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed it even with me, right? I was like, um, me to invite people to dance with life, who am I to do that, right? But as you said, at the back of me, like, yes, that is me. So it's so interesting, and I saw it in others that when they, you create the why statement, and then we read it together, and then it's like, is this me? Is this truly who I am? And it's like, yes, that's your why. That these are your gifts, and give yourself permission to bring them to the world, right? That's why you are here. And I think it's a responsibility. It's not only to feel good about yourself, but it's a responsibility to show up every day in that best fulfilled, inspired form of who you are, and not, classify it. I've done it and that's it. It's when, shit hits the fan, you show up as your best self, and it's totally possible. It's absolutely possible.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's making me think of, and I can't remember where it's coming from in my mind at this moment, but I know recently enough, I have been contemplating this idea and reading these thoughts of when you don't show up as who you said you would be,
Mm,
it's not just that you don't show up. And it's not just even that the people who were relying on you to show up in their lives and help them with whatever they're going through. Like if you think about your family, right? If you don't show up in a way that's really being who you authentically came to be so that they feel safe to be who they came to be, that's at one level of how it doesn't work. But there's a whole other level of how it doesn't work when you don't show up, which is that all the people who came with the same intent to come and do what they showed up to do needed you to be the trigger. And those are the people you never know what those things are. And
Exactly.
I think about um, the whole idea of, and I have a dear friend who told this story to me in person about having going through this stage of enlightenment where you get to see your life review and you get to see the things that you've done that where you were not there for the people you said you would be there for. You didn't fulfill your contract,
Yeah.
your soul contract, right? And that one of the most stunning things for this person when they went through that process was not that they saw people they expected to see who they had ignored and not given what they needed, but the people who they did not ever expect to see, who were people they hadn't even noticed because they were so busy ignoring their path that 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 person didn't even register on their screen. Even
Wow.
though that person was there in their world, they never gave them the attention to go even, oh, I see you. Oh, hello. Am I here for you for some reason? And those were the ones where the pain was the deepest because they realized not only had they failed the people around them who they knew they failed, but that they had failed to even recognize the people who they promised to be there for.
Wow. True. Yeah. It's a disservice, right, to humanity, let's say, when you don't show up as who you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Another thing I'd like to mention is in my case, right? I was completely misaligned to my why in my daily life. And that was maybe that's why the change was so dramatic and you noticed it for me because I was, on the hamster wheel doing my thing every day and of course uh, the real fulfilled me was someone else, right, that wasn't showing up almost at all, I would say, maybe from time to time. so so that was very interesting because when I did my why, I was in the cohort in the school, and there was another colleague of mine, another coach that he did his why, and he was so well aligned with his why, and it was very interesting to see that it's like a compass, right? And you can be on the path to where the compass points you, or you can be like me, where it's like, oh boy, where I was going, uh, go back on your own path, and that triggers a lot of rethinking life and how, I mean, really practical decisions in life that of course you are not supposed to make them immediately but think through them as you align to your new purpose. And that was for me very interesting to understand that, that you can be very well aligned or not. And as I said before, you may not be even ready for your why, and that will take time to adjust into it and align with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I imagine that the people who, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I would assume that the people who are most eager to do this process are probably more likely to be ready to get aligned with it, even if they're
Yeah.
not.
Yes. Yes, and that's why I think it's important that it's your choice to want to go through the process. It has to come from the person itself. um and then what I notice, it's extremely impactful for people that are in the midst of a transformation, that they are looking for something. It's like it puts you on, it shows you the direction. And actually you show yourself the direction, because that's why, is another reason why this is so impactful, because it's you living your life through your stories. It's not, as I said, something from the outside. And it's after you see yourself, you cannot unsee yourself. It's like, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah. No, no. And I can say that clearly for myself from just from going through the process. It puts everything in really strong relief. You don't, it's not it's not like it's a bad thing. It's a sense of, that's why I said it was like, wow, this is huge. But on the other hand, yeah, of course, this is what it is. You
Yeah.
feel both of those things at the same time, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like a homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is that question of responsibility. Like, are you really going to do it now? Are you going to step out there and be visible in the world as who you really are?
Yes.
Right? That's the question it's asking you. So if you do this process, you better be willing to be ready to go and do that. And it's funny to me as we're talking about it, what keeps coming to my mind is this whole I guess philosophy is a way of saying it, but it's not really a philosophy. It's just my sort of perspective on life that I've had for decades. This whole idea of absolute freedom, total responsibility, that really is the true nature of human. And that's who we're supposed to be being when we're here, is the one who takes total responsibility for every single aspect of our lives and who demands the absolute freedom to make those decisions, that we cannot put those decisions on others.
Yeah.
And in a way, what I love about this process is that what it's done for me is validate that sense within myself that even though I've done so many different things in my life, I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you've done every spiritual class in the world, I've done everything in the world. I've been every kind of person of, every kind of business work, starting things, having kids, all of it. And I realize now that this thread has been there all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can see that when I needed to start Recycle Hawaii, and when I needed to go and do all these different things and be in the Seth group and meet these people and learn how to do channeling, and all these different things that I've done over the decades that I to get to here, every one of them fits into this why.
Yeah. You could see the red thread through your life. I mean, we all do, right? When we look back and connect the dots. And
Yeah.
and the beautiful part is that the dots were plotted, very well on the past to show us. And it's just it seems we don't have the time or the attention to look through our life, right? That's why in the process, which some people can do it on their own, but what I find it's important is for someone to keep that space and be the witness, and help you go through it. I think for me that was very important, because I tried before to do it on my own, and I didn't get too far. But when I had my own why coach being there and asking me the questions and observing me objectively, that didn't give me space to run away. Because one of the interesting things is that happened to me, and I feel that happened to others as well that I worked with, is there was one particular memory. I could see it right in my mind, and I was avoiding it in the process of telling my story. And luckily I was asked and drilled into until I had to let it out, right? But it was not comfortable. It was not easy to let that particular story that made a huge difference in the end, to let it out. And I was conscious that I was avoiding it, and yet I didn't have the energy to spit it out until I was cornered and I had no choice.
So interesting. You see, and I'm imagining to myself,
Mm.
I can't imagine doing this process by myself because I don't know how you did the magic that you did, but I know I I didn't I didn't bring anything to the table when we did the process together that wasn't available to me beforehand. I had just never seen it in the way that the process made it visible.
Mm.
And I think that is the power of having someone who holds space for you. And I also think we have this amazing ability to be blind to the one thing
Yes.
about ourselves that everybody else can see.
Yes. I mean, the dance for me was so insanely crazy. I don't know, all these adjectives, not to see it. And I was like, I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it that this important spice was missing from my life.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
so interesting.
indeed, indeed, yes. Um,
And I also have to say, I love that this process has taken on this way in your life now as this this place where you find the fulfillment of actually what it is that
mhm.
is your life path, that
Yes,
not only was it the thing that unlocked it for you, but
yeah.
that also now is giving you this way of connecting to people and bringing yourself into this space of joy and fulfillment. I mean, that's pretty darn sweet to have all of that wrapped up in one package.
It is. And I mean, my vision is to bring it also into organizations, because I think, and many organizations already use it. And actually, even in my work, we use it, not because of me, it's been there for a while. But it can still be refined or used in small teams. And as well, there will be a second part that I think Tim Simon will release, and that will be the workshops where you can do it with multiple people at one time, because there is a time investment one-on-one. As you know, it's about 2.5, 3 hours. And I think it will be more impactful if it can be done in a workshop format. And I'd really like to do that. And I think for me, the most important thing that I would like to achieve as a next step is to take it into colleges, or I think high schools. It may be too early in someone's life. Um, I know Simon said that the youngest person that he worked with was about 16 or 17 years old. So that's why I'm thinking more towards colleges. And I'd like, because I remember when I graduated high school, and I had the choice to go to do medical school, which is I was preparing for, or business that in the end my heart chose, right? And I said, no, I feel really called for this foreign business. I wanted to do diplomacy. So I think if I would have had this guidance, from a wide discovery at that time, the choice wouldn't have been so difficult. In the end, I'm glad I figured it out. And I think it's especially for the generations that are coming to have clarity, where their life purpose lies, and be able to action it early in life. It can be so instrumental. So that's something I would love to do. Besides, of course, anybody else that would love to go through the process.
Well, and it occurs to me as I hear you saying that one of the things you said is that it's so powerful when you're in time of transformation.
Mm,
Well, if we look out at the entire planet right now, we
mm,
are in a time of transformation, big time, at every level, in every way, whether it's, I mean, everything.
yeah.
We literally are at the point where it's change time. We have to change. And the changes that we can make are right in front of us to make.
Yeah.
And the young people, better than anybody else, are not only prepared to make them, they're already making them, right? They're the ones who are discovering. I mean, I think I see a new story every week of some young person, two teenagers in Texas who develop a little pen device that can
Yeah.
remove um, nanoplastics from water, right? I mean, it's just one thing after another. They're not waiting for us.
Yes. They are on a mission. And yeah.
And so I think that's a brilliant audience
Mhm.
to explore working with, because I think they can not only do they have a sense of wanting to do something, they're eager
Yes.
to change and to find the things that are going to work in the world.
Yeah. Which is
And,
in alignment with themselves, right? Which is the most
right.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's, otherwise I think we do end up in a place, or I certainly can see it in my own life, where we feel overwhelmed by all the things that we think need to be happening that aren't happening. That's, right now on this planet, that's an easy place to end up. And if you know why you're here, then it's a lot easier to navigate into the space of what you're here to do and go do it, right?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. You have no hesitation. And I think once you know your why and your hows, they also act as filters, right? Because I look at myself before knowing my why, I would do a million things, and I took pride in doing a million things, and I was so dispersed in doing things that were actually not aligned with who I am. And now I can narrow it. I get more energy and time back, and I can prioritize things. And it's easier to say no, because I think also one of the things we don't do as humans is we don't say no, to what doesn't make sense. Most of the times we do whatever flies our way. So now I can with so much more ease to say I'm not doing this, it's not aligned, it will not bring me fulfillment, it will not inspire me. And I in that way I can say it created this itself, right? A big change in the way that my daily life goes on. Besides, when we talk purpose and cause, it can be a little overwhelming, but it has really an impact that is very tactical in our daily life.
I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
I think it absolutely does. It has for me.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly in the same ways. There are things now that I look at and I'm just like, oh no. No,
Not the,
no, I've been falling for you for decades. I'm not going down those roads anymore. I mean, it's even for me, it's even led me to places where I've made changes in things that I was midstream in.
mm,
I was like, oh, I'm going to go do this, but I had started doing that before I went through this process with you. And then I'm afterwards looking at it and going, you know what, you have to go. I'm not doing you anymore. And it's interesting because in one way it's very subtle.
mm-hmm.
Um, it's about how you feel moment to moment as you're walking through your day, and
Mm,
you feel in alignment with why you're here and what you're doing.
mm,
And in the other way, it's not subtle at all, because it's sort of, I'd almost say it sets new boundaries, right? It just sets new boundaries where there's not a question anymore.
it does. Yeah. It gives you clarity. I mean, when you have the clarity of your why, and then the discipline of your house, in the sense I show up consistently, in my values and my strengths, and I'm not inventing, because especially with the spiritual work that most of us are doing these days, we want to be that, and we want to be that, and we want to, get enlightened and whole and all of that. But there are other things we have in us already, and we are covering them in mud and excuses, and we don't shine them, right? And then when that's who I am, I don't need to chase all these other things. Of course, they will come along, but you focus on, in being disciplined about who you are, then the results will be consistent. Everything you do, irrespective, what hat you wear, will be consistent, with who you are, and your purpose, and the ways your values and strengths manifest.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it also just gets a lot of stuff off the table and out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I have to say, I think that's a big one, especially for people who are on a spiritual path, and especially for people who are newly discovering themselves on a
Yeah.
spiritual path,
Yeah.
because it can be so overwhelming. I mean, when I went through the early phases of what I would call, now looking back at it, my awakening, in those words that people use, there was nobody doing it.
Mm.
I mean, Jane Roberts had done it in the 60s with channeling Seth, but I mean, seriously, it was the late 1980s and then the 1990s and into the early 2000s that many, many of my most profound experiences were happening. And there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't all these people channeling galactics all over the place. I cannot imagine
Yeah.
what it
And
would be like for me to have had those experiences in that context.
mm, yeah.
So,
Times different, and we are bombarded with information, right? And it's like, what do you run after? What do you filter out? What do you select? And I think this is what it can become overwhelming for our, neuronal highways, right? When you look everywhere and try to absorb everything, but when you can say very clearly, I'm not going to get involved in this or engaged, I stay true to myself. I think that makes a huge, huge difference.
yeah.
Huge difference.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think it also gives you the power. For me, what it's done is it's given me the power to look in a with a different set of eyes at how I discern
Mm-hmm.
what's worth my time or not in the moment. And this whole sense of knowing that I know what's true within myself, um, that whole cascade experience that happened to me continues to unfold, and it's leading me in a place. And I wonder if this is true for you too. It's leading me in a place where it sort of ups the ante. It takes me to a new level of challenge within myself to continue to rise to the place that I know is possible within me in terms of how I am being in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a really good example for that is this whole experience I had recently where I just heard the words, when you truly choose the highest and best for all, when you can truly choose the highest and best for all, everything else takes care of itself. And that has been walking around in my head now for weeks. And it shows up at the most inopportune moments. Whenever I'm about to judge somebody or, be irritable about something, and it's asking me, really? You're going to do that? You could just step back and choose the highest and best for all and surrender to the fact that the best thing possible is trying to unfold here if you'll let it.
Yeah, and you let it unfold, right? And
Yeah.
there
And
is,
when you do,
yeah.
the miracles just fall all over you,
Mm,
right? Everything shifts and then suddenly everything's fine.
yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, I as I said, it's amazing. I am so glad to see also your feedback after all this time, right? And I can tell you most of the people I helped with the process, they call me back, after a day or 2 days or 3 days, or write me emails, and I am so humbled to see the change in everyone, literally everyone, because you see yourself, you can't hide from yourself, right? You can't hide from the awareness that this is me. And yeah, it's very magical.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't let you do the things in the ways that you may have been able to get away with,
Mm,
to make yourself small or to put yourself down
mm,
or to judge yourself,
mm.
right? It doesn't let you do those anymore because
Oh,
every time you do them, you know what you're doing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you are aware. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because I think of this whole process, and it's funny. We were over at a friend's place yesterday we have a nursery and we have a lot of plants, and he had gotten a bunch of plants. He's very close by, he has a beautiful property, and he's making all these beautiful installations of trees and working with people in the community. He's doing some incredible work. And he really doesn't do a whole lot of spiritual work that I'm aware of. I think he's beginning to on that path. But anyway, I mentioned to him this whole why process, and he knew what it was. And it made me laugh because he said that whole thing that I think a lot of people do, um, who have any background in business, right? Which is, oh, you have to know your why. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, yeah, but that doesn't really touch it. It's so much deeper than that. Um, and it just made me laugh because I think about this whole thing and the transformations that it's bringing to me, and how many years in the business world I've been being pounded with this idea that, if people don't have a big why, they won't finish what they're starting. And I'm thinking to myself, who would have guessed that this idea of the why would actually be the thing that would unlock your deepest understanding of yourself?
Yes. Yes.
Very different.
I totally appreciate it, because in business, as I said, we've been using it for years, and we do a lot of things, why related, but then the individual part, it's where, the light, the bulb was lit, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is very, because each change starts with each of us, right? The big change. Until you change yourself, nothing else, you can't trigger change at scale.
Right.
Well,
No, absolutely. That's everything, is that this for me, this is the biggest message in the spiritual community that I think is still not being addressed well
mhm.
enough or at all enough, that the change that we're seeking is the change within us, not outside of us. And that's my whole sort of tension around this whole unity
Mhm.
concept, because I can't beat the drum loud enough of there's no such thing as unity
Mhm.
without sovereignty. The
Mhm.
only way you get unity is with sovereign
Yeah.
individuals, and the only way you get sovereign individuals if you have people who know who they are, who take
Yes.
responsibility for their actions in their life,
Yeah.
and who aren't blaming somebody else or
Yes.
collapsing into somebody else,
Yes.
or right.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we change the world. We become the sovereign beings that we're looking for to lead us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And authentic, right? Authenticity, I think. We try to copy a lot that's out there and we forget who we are.
Right. And that's my, that's my calling card.
Mm-hmm.
Authenticity is, I came in that way. I can't help it. And it's funny, for years of my life, decades really, um, I used to hate it that I can never hide how I actually feel about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband's been a wonderful teacher for me of learning to just accept that that's how it is. But yeah, if we can't do it by being someone else. That's why we have to do the inner journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
yeah, we can't do it by being an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do it based on somebody else's belief system. And most of us have no clue what our own belief system is because we haven't spent any time looking at it.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, that's what got me started at age 17 was the Seth material. And that was one of the first things I came across in his work. If you want to know what you believe, look at your life.
Mm-hmm.
Your life is a perfect reflection of all your beliefs,
Yeah.
and particularly your hidden beliefs that you can't see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of inner work that's involved in this journey.
Yes.
But
And
knowing who you
it's
are,
an effort.
I'm sorry, go
Effort.
ahead.
No, it's an effort, right? It goes back to what you said. It's easier to look at others' life and judge and blame rather than looking at your own life. I think it's an effort and an energy that we are not willing to invest. And that's where I go back to someone not cornering you, but holding the space for you to do it. I think um, that puts you, in front of yourself to face yourself and take
Mm-hmm.
what you said. The most important, take responsibility. That's the key in today's world. Take responsibility for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And all those other doors will open and unlock once you begin to unpack that story for yourself.
Mhm.
And I think for most of us, I don't know about for you, but for me, certainly some of the biggest unpacking happened in the times in my life when I was literally in crisis. And I didn't always realize it at the time that that's what was happening.
Mhm.
But ultimately, it became clear to me, or I had experiences which crystallized it, you know. And I remember years ago, Caroline Myss used to talk about this in her books that, um, when you lose a job, when your relationships fall apart, when these things happen, our tendency is to say, why me?
Mhm.
But the real question is, why now? Why is this happening now? Because it's always a wake up call,
Mhm.
right? It's always happening because there's something that you are not seeing in your life that needs your attention, or you're going down a direction that's not the direction.
Mhm.
And it's always a gift if you can step back enough to stop going, you know, poor me.
Exactly, and it's these tough, meaningful moments that show you what's missing in your life at that point, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting because if you can look at your life and from where you are today and look back, you can see, and I've seen it in some stories. It was so amazing. I mean, I'm so blessed and grateful to do this work because I could see when someone operates at their best, they had a certain behavior, right? And they would do certain things. like wake up in the morning 2:30, 3:30 a.m. It's tough. I have to drive a few hours, but I feel happy because I bring value. And then at the end of the spectrum is like, I don't want to get out of the bed. I just don't want to see anyone. I could sleep through the day and my life is a mess. And I expect, that my business brings me passive income, right? And yet I'm super unhappy. And you can see, hey, in order for you to be fulfilled, you need to put effort. You need to wake up in the morning, not to stay and run away from people. Bringing, even if you get passive income from some business, it doesn't bring value. You are at your best when you bring value to others, to a business, to whatever. And it's a perfect, black and white, if you want, story. It's so mathematical. That was shocking for me to see, and we don't see it in our lives, right? I mean, if you start telling your story, you probably will notice something, but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to me. I was just stunned to see the antithesis, so well reflected. And it's like, you want to be happy and fulfilled? Wake up at 3:30 in the morning and do something meaningful, bring value to somebody, something, a business, and stop complaining that your life is miserable, right? And sleep in, because that will not make you happy. The effort is missing. And I think we are in this age where we think, oh, I can, do nothing, money will flow in and I'll be happy because I have all this. But actually, it's not what makes us happy. And we are trapped in this belief that having, doing nothing and having money to spend and just going out maybe with friends is going to fulfill us. It's not. And that is something that hopefully, people will realize that by going through their life stories, reviews.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think, well, it's interesting because each of these things keeps leading me back to my original study of the Seth material, which I did not expect at all in this conversation, but that is one of his most primary teachings, is the whole concept of what he called value fulfillment.
Mhm.
That if you are not engaged in some form of value fulfillment, that's when your life loses all meaning. That's when, and that's why the whole idea, I think, when people get into this whole this whole realm that was going on and still is going on in many ways, of you create your own reality, which is part of the Seth teachings too. And people are going, well, I'm just, I'm going to create my own reality and win the lottery, and that's going to make everything better, and yada yada. It bypasses the entire life,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the life of what it is you're here to do that is what brings the fulfillment, what brings the value you have to the world, fulfills you, and makes everything feel and be miraculous and whole.
Exactly.
And there's no shortcut.
There is no shortcut, Becky. There is no shortcut. It's just lying to ourselves, right? I think and that's um a belief that this society, right, through progress, has instilled into us, to think that we all want to go into comfort and to, having and not doing, which is, as I said, it's a trap. And you go there and you stay in that for a year, two, and then all of a sudden your life falls apart. You go in depression and you don't understand why that's happening to you. But if you look at what was I doing when I was happy, you realize that it's the complete opposite most of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it does tie to this whole world view of pushing and being driven to produce. That's part of this modern culture of the endless need for economic growth and all of that stuff is tied to this idea of production. And we get taught as children, you have to go produce something, you have to go make something of yourself, do something. But really, what we need is time to explore our imaginative selves and discover where our joy is, because that's where all our gifts are.
Yes.
And then when we're bringing those gifts to the world, suddenly we become a gift.
Yes. Yes. The gift that keeps on giving, right? I heard it somewhere.
Yes. And I think that's, when I look at the changes in your life and the way that things are unfolding for you, it's so clear to me that, yeah, you're having a great time.
I
and
am.
and you're not searching anymore.
I'm not. That's the funny part, right? Because I realized, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, I was a consumer of spirituality, and I was running and keeping on seeking the next big thing and consuming it, and the more you do it, the more you become the more hungrier you are for it. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong, because it helped me reach, to where I am now. But I realized that, and I knew it, we discussed, Becky, many a times, right, that you already have it in yourself. It's not go I mean, there are guides on the path, and they point you towards a direction, and you go. And there is a moment when you realize it was always there, right? And it's simple, it's not complicated, it's not complex, it's actually very attainable. And to me, that is and I have to tell you, ever since I have done the why, right? I don't think there was a day where I didn't feel this, I don't know, happy, joyful energy being with me, and me choosing it. And yeah, do I have bad days? I do have bad days, but this is like a fountain, right? It's always springing. I can't stop it. I just can't stop it. It's like unplugged, and it's always there.
That speaks volumes all by itself.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's who each of us is. Yeah.
Yeah, when we find it.
Yes.
I think so too. And it doesn't mean that life won't be challenging,
It has.
right? It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that you will have sure-footedness.
Yeah, and the resources and the resourcefulness, better said, to go through all the challenges. And the challenges are not something bad anymore, right? They are opportunities to grow. And I heard the other day somebody saying there is no failure, it's only feedback. And I really love this, because we stamp with labels everything, and it's good or bad. And then if you take the stamp out and you look at it, from a different perspective, what do I do with this stuff that showed up in my life now, without saying, oh, it's a bad thing, right? It's something, it's an opportunity to grow, to get involved, to also take a step back and just look at it, without, putting the direction, oh, this is bad and I'm going to get into trouble or whatever, because we have this set of programs, right? And something happens and we jump into it, and we always do the same thing and the same approach, instead of taking a pause and, just let assumptions fall apart and look at it as a new thing in our life.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's, in a way, that in itself is revolutionary, because we don't realize, and I think that's one of the reasons I love having grandchildren, because they question everything. And then they reflect back things that are the least likely for you to think of as what they're going to pick to be the thing they're going to decide is important that they need to tell you. right? And it gives you this perspective that just it's really priceless because there's no filter there.
Absolutely.
Zero filter, which means they look at a situation and it just out of their mouth comes exactly what they've just experienced and observed in this situation. And it can be so funny, and it can also be so enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
So enlightening. And I think we lose sight sometimes, especially in this world, in this day and age, of the things that really matter. And for me, that's one of the places where it's the easiest for me to find it again, is just to have those kids in my space for a little bit, because it's so easy to engage with them, and it's so easy to find the things that inspire them just by being easy, by being joyful, by being playful, by allowing things to unfold and not having an agenda. And I think we forget how much agenda we bring to the world as adults. So
We
it's,
do. We are set up like that, right?
yeah.
And that's where it takes courage to break out of those patterns and sometimes just do nothing, even if something that in the past called for action, always the same action. What if I do nothing about it and just stay still and see what happens?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that actually might be one of the hardest ones for a lot of us.
Mm,
We're so used to jumping up and taking care of things and fixing it and fixing it and fixing
mhm.
it. And sometimes the answer is, what happens if you don't fix it? What if
Yeah.
it's not for you to fix it? And you can't always find that out unless you at least once don't do it. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating to me, and I think I have to say I'm so grateful for this process. And I know that you've said that this is what you're doing at least some of the time. And I actually have talked to several people who want me to pass them on to you to get in touch so they can have this done.
Mm.
So I suppose we'll be doing that. Are you actually doing it in a way for people who just, if we put out your information, they can reach out to you?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Yeah. We can put my email address. Definitely.
okay, so we will put that in the show notes for this session, for this podcast, and then people can find you. And I just am thrilled because I know from my own experience, anybody who goes through this process with you, they're not going to regret it. And all I can say is be ready, because you might be really surprised to see the kinds of changes that happen, but you're going to love it. That's my experience. You're going to love it. And you're going to love the life that it brings you as you step into it more and more.
Thank you, Becky. I'm very humbled by your words and also the feedback that you gave me today. Through this wonderful conversation, how this impacted your life, and of course, it impacted mine massively.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess we could say it's very impactful
Mm,
if you're willing to go there.
yes.
And thank you. Thank you so much for
You.
bringing it to me, because I was one of those people, I have to admit, who saw it and just thought, oh, yeah, the why thing.
Yes.
I know that.
I remember you immediately signed up for it. Yes.
Yes,
When can we
it's
do
true.
it?
Once I realized that it wasn't what I thought I knew, I was very quick to change my mind, and I'm so glad I did. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we will have more conversations
Yes, looking forward to it, Becky.
moving forward. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Me too. Love you so much.
Love
And we'll
you.
talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.